Today we're going to look at polar and rectangular forms of equations. The first thing you need to know is that x is the same thing as r cosine theta, and y is the same thing as r sine theta. You've heard me say this for a while now. So if I had an x and a y, I could change that to r cosine theta and r sine of theta. Conversely, I could go r sine theta, r cosine theta back to a y and an x, respectively. All right, the first thing I want you to look at is this problem here. If I have to find the rectangular coordinates for D, and these are D, let's see how I do that. Well, this right now is given to me as an r and a theta. So to switch it to x and y, I would just use the theorem that says go 2 for your r, 2 cosine of theta, and 2 sine of theta. Now, if you use your hand trick, you might remember that pi over 3 is the same thing as bending your index finger. That would mean that here I would have 2 times this. So we don't get confused, I'm going to take away this parenthesis for a second. This will be 2 times cosine of 1/3 is 1/2. And then over here, the sine of 1/3, or pi over 3 rather, is the square root of 3 over 2. So this is my x and y. You can see this value here, the 2's cancel, 2's cancel. So I'd be left with 1 comma square root of 3. That would be my point. Let's try the next one. It says, find the rectangular coordinates for f, given that it's -5, 45. So we go through the same process. -5 cos of 45 degrees and -5 sine of 45 degrees. Again, I'm going to use my hand trick. 45 degrees is the same thing as pi over 4, also known as your middle finger. So this, I don't want it to get confusing. There you go. -5 cosine, if you bend your middle finger and flip, you'd be left with square root of 2. So you have 2 fingers remaining on the bottom, over 2. And then here I would have -5 times, the sine is the same thing because I only have 2 fingers on top. As I look at this, I see that nothing cancels. So I could simplify it, or not really simplify it, I'm sorry. I could rewrite it as -5 times the square root of 2, all this over 2. And the y would be the same thing, -5 square root of 2 all over 2. Last one. Go back. I'm going to have, now I don't like negative angles, so I'm going to add 360, which I can always do this. This means that this point H is the same thing as 4 comma 120 degrees. So if I wanted to find this, the cosine of 120 and 4 times the sine of 120. Well, 120 is the same thing as a pi over 3. It's actually 2 pi over 3. So 2 pi over 3, fold your pi over 3 finger. And again, for cosine, I'm going to have 1/2. This is just like the very first problem, except this time it's negative. And then I'm also going to have 4 times, the sine will be positive because it's second quadrant, square root of 3 over 2. Well, I can simplify some of this. I can simplify this one, becomes 2, that becomes also 2, so I have -2, comma 2 square roots of 3. This would be my answer. Now let's go check the book and see if they got the same thing. Here's the answer for A and B. They said the point is 1 square root of 3, which was what we got. Here, it says -5 square roots of 2 over 2. It's also what we got. And finally, for part C, they got the same thing. So here's one for you to try. See if you can come up with, find the rectangular coordinates for R here. I'll let you pause the video, and then we'll work together again. Okay, so the first thing I will do, let me take this away. The first thing is I don't like having a negative radius, so remember, you can just make the radius positive, but you just have to add or subtract 180 degrees. I'm going to subtract 180. To flip it. So when I do that, I get 120. So I'm looking for 8 times the cosine of 120 times 8 times the sine of 120. Now we just did 120 degrees a second ago. We know that that's a half. This right here is the same thing as 1/2. And this right here is the same thing as the square root of 3 over 2. So if I wanted to simplify this by multiplying through, 8 times a half is the same thing as 4. That's 4 there. And then when I multiply over here, it'll be 4 squared is 3. Which answer is that? One mistake, I forgot that this is negative 1/2. Now that I look at my answers, I realize I made that mistake. So if that's negative, then this becomes negative. And so we have negative 4 is C.